Alrighty, more talk and less bickering. Vaccines, presented by yours truly, Stephanie Davies. Now, what's going to be the takeaway from this presentation? There's a bunch of different presentations that you can see. What's going to be the takeaway from this one? Well, the takeaway from this one will be how to have an actual conversation with someone who has different beliefs about vaccines and promoting more conversations and less interrogations. That almost rhymes. But so often, especially in talking about vaccines, there is a lot of hostility. This happens in a lot of situations with differing opinions. So here's the key. You can use this in other situations as well. But you see a lot in fighting about vaccines back and forth. There's just hostility. Now, absolutely nothing will come from this continued hostility. Just more hostility. No breakthroughs, no conversations, no exchanging of points. It's one brick wall, then another brick wall. Back and forth, back and forth. I can get anywhere with that. Like, but why does it matter? Why does it matter at all? Some of these brick walls are fighting each other. What's it matter for? Well, it matters because of the effects of it. Let's first talk about what vaccines are and how they work. Vaccines are, they're either dead or extremely weakened versions of a virus that are put into the body so that the immune system learns what is not okay and what to attack. And that's wonderful because it makes it to where the next time someone may encounter this at its full strength, this virus that is, their body will probably know how to fight it and be able to equip and stop it without it becoming life-threatening and deadly. Now, herd immunity. That is one of those buzzwords that always gets thrown around back and forth in the conversation with vaccines. What is it though? Some people don't explain it. Herd immunity is protecting people who cannot be vaccinated by being vaccinated, which is such a science way to put it. I'm going to give a bit of a visual here. So imagine a big field, a big old field. And in the middle of that field, there is a tiny plot of land. This plot of land, a water. We'll say it's water, so it's easier to visualize. So there's this big plot of land, and there's water in the middle. There's no way for water from the outside to get in. Say it's covered. There's no sky. There's no rain. Weather people do not get on to me for this. It's trying to help. So we have this tiny lake in the middle of this big plot of land, and there's no way for anything outside to get to it. That tiny lake in the middle is our people who are not vaccinated. Maybe they can't be, maybe they aren't, but they're not vaccinated. And the surrounding land is people who are vaccinated. And because of people who are vaccinated, the viruses and the things that could potentially kill these people, as they do not have the predisposure immune-wise to it, cannot access these people. Now, what's the reason someone couldn't get vaccinated and would have to, whether they wanted to or not? There's a bunch of autoimmune issues. People with AIDS, HIV. One of the nurses that I work with has lupus. And during this whole COVID outbreak, she couldn't work on our floor for a few months, even though she loved our floor, because it was life-threatening for her. It was something that could have genuinely killed her. And as much as she may have wanted it, she couldn't get the vaccine. It just wouldn't have worked. It would have been like injecting herself with COVID on purpose because of how her immune system worked. Now, okay, that makes sense. Her immune system is bad, or someone else's immune system may not work for them and might work against them. But why is that bad for everyone? Say my immune system works great. Why is it bad for me if some other people decide not to be vaccinated? Well, if people decide not to get vaccinated, they start to create a little path to that lake. They start to create a little river, and it'll be a direct line to people who are not vaccinated. Okay, again, I say I'm vaccinated now. I'm vaccinated. How does this affect me? I've already got my defenses against this virus, right? Well, at the stage we're at now. But if this were to continue happening, this virus in the middle with ample people will do what viruses love to do, which is mutate and multiply and mutate again and multiply again and mutate again and multiply again, creating so many different more strains that we don't have vaccinations for. And we can try to make them up on the spot, but their effectiveness, how attenuated they are, that's how weakened they are, all of that up in the air because we won't have the time nor delicacy to actually properly assess it because it's just multiplying at such a fast rate because so many people are not vaccinated against the strand that was almost wiped out. So it's bad for everyone. Well, wow, when put like that, it sounds sure to sound scary to not be vaccinated or not have vaccines. So why are some people against them? It sounds all puppy dogs and roses. Well, vaccines have not always been puppy dogs and roses, as I have stated. The history of vaccines was a very gruesome one, as this idea had kind of started before doctors and medical professionals knew to sanitize their tools. Yeah, you can imagine how many people were getting vaccinated and not surviving. Now, whether that was due to the fact that they were getting full versions of the virus, they were getting tools that had been contaminated with multiple other people, or any other reason that can kill you in that time period, anyone's guess. But medicine's come a lot farther than that, right? Why is this a topic again? I feel like this faded out, right? Well, this has become a recent topic again because of a paper written by former Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Iliolymphoid nodular hyperplasia, nonspecific coitus, and pervasive developmental disorder was a paper written by this former doctor that claimed that there was a connection between autism and vaccines. This has since been proven false, and that this doctor did cherry pick his information. Now, for those of you who want to be on the in and want to know how he was able to do this, I got a bit of information for you. The age that kids who are born with autism are diagnosed, well, born with autism, no one's diagnosed as born with autism because it's a socio-developmental disorder, is 2. The age is 2 that you can first diagnose someone with it or see it in a child. And I don't know how many of you have babies out there, but there are shots that are given in the 1 to 2 year span that is quite regimented and regular for everyone. So if you can cherry pick kids who have parents or have a history of autism in the family and pick them up around the time that they're getting vaccines, you can draw this fake correlation that might seem realistic, but it has been since proven by, I believe, 7 different doctors that it was cherry picked and it just was not correct information, which is horribly, horribly sad. But these things do happen. Another reason is a mistrust in the government. Now, whatever your stance be politically, government-wise, I don't know other government words, buzzwords. Whatever your stance is, whether you trust the government or you don't, you cannot deny that there is a growing mistrust for the government from all walks of people, from all sorts of people from all walks of life. And that mistrust of government can kind of lead into mistrust of big corporations. Now, these big corporations can also be called big pharma, but that's a little different. But it makes people, not believe in what bigger corporations have to say, and maybe they don't have their best interest at heart. And that's just a growing idea that's developing socially. Now, big pharma is kind of an advanced version of this. Big pharma is the middleman, which essentially the people between the patient getting their care and the patient receiving the bill. Now, everyone knows, this is no secret, that medical bills have just continued to go up. And people wanting to have some sort of thing to put on it, some name and some reason, have called it big pharma. There's a bunch of reasons, including copyright being what they are for medicine in America, amongst others, that have just caused the price of medicine to skyrocket into astronomical levels that they probably shouldn't be, between me and you, the viewer. But that's something else. But this mistrust of big pharma, because a lot of people think that because they want the money, they don't want the health of the people, which, again, bunch of factors. There's also perceived dangers of vaccines. So remember how I mentioned medicine coming a long way? Well, it hasn't always been, even as far as it is. Even just a few decades back, there were extraneous um, elements and things in vaccines that just didn't need to be. As of now, we've nixed that. I've done nothing to develop vaccines. As of now, medicine has nixed that. And all that's in vaccines is what needs to be in vaccines. But if you look at older recipes for them, or even just the scientific names and uh, elemental wording of it, it can be like my molecular structure. It can just be very jarring to hear over the common name. So there's that in adding to possible dangers of vaccines. There's also alternative medicine, which in the past few years has just been growing at a kind of crazy rate in the West, because the West is not typically influenced by the East, as the East is influenced by the West. It has been a back and forth, but the East does take a lot more from the West, depending on the scope you see it through. And of course, I'm in the West, so my scope's probably biased. But the rate at which alternative medicine is being taken and implied in people who would have no other way to usually see or view these methods and maybe incorporate them is kind of astronomical. It's growing at a really big rate. And a lot of these medicines, they have different reasons, but part of it is the cost, of course. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that no, medicine costs good money. It's over expensive. But this alternative medicine offers sometimes a cheaper, sometimes a more believable, because sometimes what doctors can tell you can sound crazy, and some doctors don't explain well. Whereas a lot of alternative medicine practitioners will explain it to you. It's sometimes simple as that. But it's been growing, and not a lot of alternative medicine actually includes vaccines at all. So if you believe in that way, you're not going to see vaccines. There's also parents' want for autonomy, which is something that people may not see who aren't parents, especially. I know without studying it, it wasn't something that even crossed my radar. But a parent wants to take care of their children and wants to be the one to raise them, which I see absolutely no flaw in. There's nothing wrong with that in any sense. What happens, though, is in a doctor telling a parent the vaccines and things and all these things that you need to do for your child, it can sound more like less, hey, here is things for health and benefit, and more, this is how you should raise your child. If you're not raising your child this way, yeah. It can sound more judgmental, and depending on how the doctor delivers it, it can be more judgmental. So the parents' want for autonomy makes them want to not trust these doctors and wants to not go for what the doctor's saying. Some of it's in delivery, and some of it's just in what the parent wants. Now, what can be done with this information? A lot's been given on both sides. Well, some things to do are keep things in mind. You gotta keep this information in mind. Things like a source's validity may change depending on who's being asked what. Like, if I do not trust big pharma and these big corporations and the government, and someone were to give me an article written by the World Health Organization or Center for Disease Control, WHO and CDC, HWO, sorry, I may not believe them because I don't trust those organizations inherently. I do not believe that they have my best interest, nor the best interest of my family and loved ones in mind. Or likewise, reverse, I could give a paper written by one doctor that I trust, but maybe that's not a doctor that you trust, as the evidence portrayed in one is not matching with the CDC or World Health Organization that may have multiple doctors, but maybe I don't trust those doctors. So depending on who's presenting the information and what they believe will depend on what information seems logical and right to present. There also, of course, human nature may be inherent mistrust for the opposing side. What does that mean? Boils down to, I want to be right, and because you are challenging what I say, you must be challenging me. So I don't trust what you're saying. You must be trying to lie to me. That's on both sides. That's human nature to not want to be wrong. And you just see it a lot developing. It's just in conversations where people don't have the same opinions, and that's just common. Hate to say it, but it is. There's also the fact that people are going to be defensive of these beliefs, especially if they're on the minority side. When I first did this project, I didn't. Sorry, I had initially wanted to interview people who had different ideas. Like, I wanted to interview people who were against and who were for vaccination, same amounts, same questions on both sides, just to get a range of answers into what's happening. But in trying to contact people who were not for vaccines, I came into some terribly disheartening news. So many of these people were so untrusting and unwilling to work with me because they'd explained to me that people had used them to try to make a point on them, like against them, and prove something wrong, and that they just did not trust where I was going with it. And I had to apologize for what had happened and change the direction of this project because no one should have to feel like a battering ram for something that you hold to be a core belief. It's just not right or fair. Now, these are pretty different beliefs. How can you hold a conversation with someone you don't have the same opinion with? I'm glad you came to this presentation, quite frankly. And the way you do it is how you have a conversation with anyone. End all be all, always be genuine. Acting one way or another, acting like you believe one way or another when you don't, when talking to someone, won't get you to have a conversation. It'll get you to put on a face and then to put on a face. And it'll be two fake faces talking to each other. It's not going to be real. It's not going to be a genuine conversation. And in that same breath, do not get so passionate about your beliefs that you just simply invalidate theirs. Do not, in trying to be genuine, instead of placating them, whatever their side is, again, just say, well, you're wrong, that's incorrect, I don't believe you, la-di-da-di-da. Because that's not a conversation, that's an insult, that is an attack on someone and their beliefs. Also understand that these beliefs are probably going to mean a lot to the person. This is a super polarizing topic. Most people believe very heavily on one side or the other. There is not a lot of middle ground for most of the people. So these are beliefs that most typically are going to mean a lot to a person. But because this is a how to have a conversation with someone on polarizing topics, of course, everyone's going to want to know, how do you persuade someone to your side? Everyone wants to be on the same side as people around them. So how do you persuade them? Well, use directly affecting facts and effects. Say, I know this fact that if I were to have chickenpox, if I didn't get my varicella chickenpox vaccine, I could develop chickenpox. And once I develop actual chickenpox, I have a much higher chance to develop shingles, right? That directly affects me, no one else. Or say in my family, there's a history of vaccines greatly affecting us and almost knocking us out cold. Maybe even it has taken a few lives. This directly affects me, and this could directly affect you depending on your history. These are facts that have much more solidity for each side than, say, using an organization that the other side may not trust. That's how you find a middle ground type of source. That's how you'll actually get persuasion, possibly. Also, sympathize with the issues they see. Say, wow, I didn't realize that chickenpox could cause shingles. That's kind of scary. Or, I didn't know that vaccines could knock the wind out of you like that. I didn't know you've lost someone. I'm so sorry. Sympathize with the issue. Don't invalidate that. A lot of this is about not invalidating people. Just a little tip to get through. Also, understand that these beliefs are not malevolent. When I was talking to people about who I was intentionally meaning to interview, I had a few conversations here and there, but a lot of them said the same thing, that people had come after them saying that they were bad parents, saying that they were bad people, saying that they were mean and evil. And some of them, when I responded with my beliefs and vaccines, said things along the lines of, well, they said because they assumed that because I didn't give them a stance, rather, that I was for vaccines. I just did not want to give a stance and make a biased research. But because I didn't give a stance, they assumed that I was for vaccines and called me evil and such, because they have just so used to being attacked. I just don't have a lot of contact with people who are one way or another. Working in the medical field, a lot of people just believe in vaccines. Point blank. There's my stance. Sorry. A few conversations here and there. But a lot of them said the same thing, that people had come after them saying that they were bad parents, saying that they were bad people, saying that they were mean and evil. And some of them, when I responded with my beliefs in vaccines, said things along the lines of, well, they said because they assumed that because I didn't give them a stance, rather, that I was for vaccines. I just did not want to give a stance and make a biased research. But because I didn't give a stance, they assumed that I was for vaccines and called me evil and such, because they have just so used to being attacked. I just don't have a lot of contact with people who are one way or another. Working in the medical field, a lot of people just believe in vaccines. Point blank. There's my stance. Sorry. But what do you do if the persuasion doesn't work? If I'm trying to persuade someone that I do or don't believe in them, what do you do? Well, and I'll be respectful. Be respectful. Repeat it again. Be respectful. Some people, like I said, have mentioned going one way or the other, being irrespectful this way or disrespectful that way. It's very upsetting to see. Also, make it clear that despite the difference, there is no ill intent between the two parties. Because you believe your way and I believe my way does not mean that I'm going to hate you, that I'm going to harass you, or any of the sort. Because, again, that is assault. That's not a conversation. Also, understand that if you are gosh darn determined, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to convince this person to change their core beliefs into my core beliefs. That is a process called resocialization that this project is not on. And it is a long and super intensive process. Alrighty, well, I hope you learned something here. Hope you learned how to talk more, how to bicker less, and I hope you have a good day. So get out there, start talking, and get some points made across either side. Make it a conversation. Don't make it a fight. Have a good day.